You're listening to Learning Leaders Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. On each episode, we sit down with key industry experts to discover more about what's happening in the world of learning and development, from current trends and insights to the most valuable lessons learned along the way. Join us for a fresh perspective on all things training and the best direction forward. Here's your host, Leanne Langford.
Hi, welcome to Learning Leaders Spotlight, the podcast where we interview the learning leaders of today to help the learning leaders of tomorrow. I'm your host, Leanne Langford. I'm the president of Training Pros. Training Pros is an L&D contract staffing company where we like to say, when you have more projects than people, let us find you the right consultant to start your project with confidence. I'm really excited about my guests today. Today, joining us, we have Tom Lahoud. He's the Senior Learning Advisor at Citi. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Leanne. Pleasure to be with you today.
We're thrilled to have you. So, Tom, let's start off introducing you to our audience. Can you share with them a 60-second overview of who you are and what you do?
Of course. Thank you again for having me today. I'm the Senior Learning Advisor at Citigroup. I'm based in Tampa, Florida. And I look after the learning programs for global legal affairs and compliance, which is one of the largest global functions within Citi and includes several other sub-functions such as crisis management, security, investigations, intelligence, legal, and regulatory strategy and policy. So quite a lot, but it is part of that bigger umbrella that's charged with ensuring the bank remains compliant with our regulators here in the U.S. and abroad.
It's a big job as well, because in today's world, we're overwhelmed with the amount of ways that we're trying to get hacked and attacked and phished and all the different words.
Absolutely.
So, Tom, what is it about learning and development that first attracted you to the field?
So I had a very early start in the field many years ago. I started to write training manuals back in the day when, of course, learning and development was very different from what it is today. And this is also before the internet was what it is today. And all forms of instructional design and learning took place. So that was my early start. And at that time, in writing these training manuals, mostly for bank processes and brokerage firms, I also had an opportunity to lead a team. Back then, they were not called instructional designers. They are today, but they were also fellow manual writers. And we had these books that would have to author using a word processor that will not made today. It is very old. And then we would publish these books and distribute them to the employees to help them understand these complex trading and brokerage platforms. But at the same time, we would get feedback from managers and leaders in the company asking us to whether we can step in and help coach and perhaps quote unquote train their employees, because they can't seem to fully grasp the concepts or what is in those training manuals. And it's very technical, very complicated, so it was not something you can easily adapt to in a short amount of time. So I stepped up, raised my hand, said, yes, I can do this. So let me go ahead and organize a training program. And back in the day, training programs were not as what you would expect. They were simply just putting someone in a room and simply showing them something without a lot of opportunity to interact, to practice. So I did change some of that. And my first program had a natural training outline, created exercises to help participants reinforce what they're eating, learning. We built an actual learning experience, so there would be a time for them to also interact with their fellow participants. And then I also added a feedback form at the end of the training. So feedback was very important to ensure that we heard their voice and also help us continuously improve the content that we're putting on. So that was my early start. And most of the time, I would say my influence comes from just being in a household of teachers. My mom was a teacher. And I felt like that's something that would be my path. So all of a sudden, from writing training manuals, we're delivering the training and leading teams of designers and trainers. That's where
It's a very familiar tale, and I'm going to collaborate or just commiserate with you. When my first job, that we didn't have internet at all. Didn't get my email address till I was in the workforce, maybe 5 or 6 years. Yeah, but training was very different then. We didn't even have PowerPoint. We just had, those overhead slides that were the clear foils, we called them. So what are the most impactful changes you've seen in learning and development just in the last few years? Because if we go all the way back to the beginning for you and I, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I started to notice a trend a few years ago where there's a lot more emphasis now on the HR interplay when it comes to learning and development. So as learning professionals, we're not just sitting in the vacuum. We are facing off to our stakeholders that we support in the business, but also to our HR stakeholders. So learning and development has always been a classic HR function in many organizations. But often there are other HR functions that seem to be somewhat disconnected from them. So if you take the HRBP community, the business partners, I take the talent partners, the workforce partner, recruiting, and so on. So what I'm seeing a lot more of now is what I'd say seamless alignment between learning and the business. So as a learning advisor, I spend the majority of my time embedded within the businesses that I support. And often I forget that I'm an HR professional, by trade. But at the same time, it is something that is becoming a lot more dominant each day. A clear bifurcation between what learning professionals are doing and the rest of the HR community. But the interplay is becoming a lot more common because we are putting our heads together to come up with solutions. So learning can't solve for everything, as you know. It's not a magic pill. Yes, we can help you upskill, reskill, and develop all these new skills. But when it comes to recruiting, for example, or acquiring and retaining talent, we have to work closely with our talent partners and also to support the businesses so the HRBPs will come into the picture. So I think this is something that I see as not always started to happen, becoming a lot more common, but also it could be something where down the road, learning will continue to lead that interaction in the business, but also continue to partner with the larger HR community.
Well, on the same note, where do you see learning and development headed in the next few years?
So I look back, I had a chance to kind of reflect on the previous experiences that I've had and also take a look at the next 5 years. So 3 things stood out for me. What I call these are trends, not necessarily something that will apply to every business or in every environment. But it seems to me, in no particular order, those are 3 trends are adaptive learning, experiential learning driven by AI and by simulations, by the tools we have today and the evolution of AI. And then there's also the third trend is I've noticed an increase in the need for reskilling the workforce. So I can go into these a bit in detail if you'd like. But I think those are the 3 trends that I've noticed. I'm sure you may have seen other trends. But when it comes to adaptive learning, and we'll have one trend that there's quite a bit of becoming more prominent is to put together a customized learning experience. Sometimes as adult learners, this is going back to adult learning theory, we learn different. We're looking for a connection beyond just, here, take this training, check the box and you're done. I'm like, okay, that's not the experience I'm looking for. So the adaptive learning customizes the learning experiences to the individual needs, leverages technology and data to personalize your content. So it learns about you, knows what you need, where you are in your learning journey, what kind of skills you have. And instead of a one-size-fits-all, which is what learning has been for many, many years, adaptive learning, it will assess your background, your knowledge, and adjust the learning path, the pace, the exercises, the scenarios accordingly. So if it notices that you are at a more advanced level, then learning will adapt to that. And that's why it's referred to as adaptive learning. So this can be anything from customizing curriculum to tailoring reinforcement exercises so that you can learn in a productive way and more effective. If you recall, in most learning engagements, there's always this broad brush strokes where we've done the training, but we may have 50 participants who attended, but how many of them actually are going to implement what they learn? Where is that impact? Where is that evidence? So I think adaptive learning is going to solve for that. That's one trend. The other trend that I see more of is the experiential, getting the experience as part of the learning. So you're no longer sitting there passively as a one-way learner. There is a more immersive way using, for example, augmented reality, where you are able to apply simulations with the help of AI tools to ensure the learning is very close to the execution of the role, what you do. So some of that is called tabletop exercises. Is something we do quite a bit of when it comes to practicing crisis management scenarios. So taking an AI tool, you can use a prompt to ask it for a specific scenario to deal with, maybe a weather emergency or, for example, a conflict in a certain area, and then help develop that muscle, that skill, the learning capability. We just talked about cyber threats in our brief conversation before, also helping simulate that's an experience. And then finally, the last one is the reskilling trend. Obviously, as adult learners, we're looking to grow, and the skills we have today may need to be enhanced, improved, or we need to acquire new skills. So I think learning will have to focus on equipping employees with new technical skills and also what's called interpersonal skills, collaboration, communication skills, stakeholder management. So those are the three trends: adaptive learning, experiential learning, and reskilling.
Definitely that's what a lot of the learning leaders that I interview do say are big trends coming. And as you're going through those examples, I'm in my head thinking of examples of how we had to do those kinds of things without technology and how much easier it must be today with the technology that's available. So let's shift gears for a second. And can you share who has been your most influential professional mentor?
That's a great question. I'm going to provide a very sort of off-script answer. I have had great managers in my career. I've also had managers who took more deeper interest in helping me advance my career as well. So those are definitely going to be on the list. What my answer is going to be, I think, where the big driver is the reverse process. So in my current role and also previous roles, I participated in mentoring new hires and junior employees. And I felt that the feedback received from them and the interaction was actually very influential. So the answer to that question is actually my mentees have been more influential, believe it or not, because I learned so much from them. And I learned about their challenges, and I learned about what they might to do to grow and how learning can help them get there. It's an interesting side of the story that we often don't look deeper into, but they are a big part of my own growth as well. So the mentees for sure.
I completely agree with you. At my levels of years of experience at this point, I don't get mentors anymore, but I do try to. I bring in interns, people who are going through graduate school in this field, and mentor them as an intern. And what they give to me is important. I'm not sure how much I give to them. They say I do, but I feel like they give back a lot more than I'm giving them through this internship. I love to do that and bring in an intern like once a year for 3 or 4 months, and it's just very helpful. They also make they make everything fresh too. They're not stuck in the old ideas and everything. Like
I value external perspectives, Leanne. I think that having that external perspective keeps you very much dialed into the talent you're supporting. They bring in a new set of ideas, whether it be a technology or a process or just a lifestyle. So I think it's important for us to be adaptive as learning professionals. Hearing their side of the story is very.
Yes. So what do you think is the most important skill right now?
So this is very near and dear to my heart. I think the most important skill is the advisory capability for a learning profession. I think this is something that often is sidelined because we are so focused on delivering learning solutions. But I think we are where there is such, where as an advisor, you combine three, I think, critical capabilities. One is change agility, being adaptive to change, responses to change, to embrace change and allow others and even help others to embrace change. The other part of the advisor capability is stakeholder management. It is a very critical part of the success story. Managing stakeholders through an adverse situation or challenge deliverables is a key part of being that trusted advisor. The skill that you should hone, you should master. And final one is strategic thinking. I think this is something we and I have talked about previously. It's often a situation where you see learning professionals focusing on a solution. Let's get into the solution mode right away. Let's fix this. Let's use a training intervention to make this work. Sometimes that's not the answer the stakeholder is looking for. Yes, it could be for now. I think what often is ignored is focus on the long term. So strategic thinking is about tomorrow and beyond. And I think that's a great part of that advisory capability. So the trifecta, so to speak, is the change agility, the stakeholder management thinking. Those are the three most important skills under the advisor umbrella.
Definitely tough skills, and you're taking me back. So right now I'm starting to see a trend where people are talking about performance consulting rather than training. And that was all the rage way back in the 90s when I was in corporate America. And it's like, oh, everything old is new again. But, and the hallmark of performance consulting is training is the last option, not the first option.
I agree. And I think that's where there's a disconnect sometimes of being those who are asking and those who are answering. Learning and training is a workforce multiplier. It enables your employees to perform better, do things in a more efficient way that help advance their mission and their business. But at the same time, this is going to sound strange from a learning professional. But sometimes the answer is no. Learning is not going to solve problems. It's not a magic wand moving away. So you check the box, I did the training, I'm okay now. That's not always the case. I think it's important to, like I said, lead with that combination of performance is a big part of it. Learning is a big part of it. But together, that's how you can succeed.
Absolutely. So what is your favorite source for industry news and information?
So there isn't one that sends out multiple sources, as many of us are looking for different content in different areas. So when it comes to data, statistics, measurement, I go to Gartner. I subscribe to their learning pillar, and they provide a ton of details on what they're seeing in the market today. They've got several studies that are occurring on the workforce trends and learning development, but also they do quite a bit of the forward-looking data, so you can see what's happening in the next 2 or 5 years. LinkedIn, of course, LinkedIn Learning's quite a bit of content there. NCD, Training Industry Magazine, several groups that I belong to. So it's a combination of different resources.
There's just so many different places we can get industry news that it's, I get different answers every time. So thank you for sharing that with our group. What's one book that everyone wanting to move into L&D leadership should read?
So there are a few books that I think are very influential, not necessarily if you want to be part of the L&D journey, but if you want to lead in that space. I think there are some books that are well-grounded, well-established. Growth Mindset by Harold Lang, that's a classic in this space. Because as a trusted learning advisor, you are also helping your stakeholders, get the learning done, but also help them look beyond it. So the growth mindset is very effective in helping to coach your stakeholders in what is beyond learning. Speaking of trust, Speed of Trust, a classic book by Stephen Covey. That is where we talk about how we gain trust, how to create a sustainable trust environment, how to regain trust when trust is lost. There will be situations when you will have that happen, unfortunately, in career, but it's also important to recover and be resilient, regain trust. Another book is more recent. It's called Own Your Authority by Marissa Sansborough. Interestingly, we do not know each other. Marissa and I do not know each other, but we went to the same school in the same year, graduated Pace University many years ago. She wrote a great book on the power within you as a learning professional, or just simply as a person, the whole. All what we do and help others own their own. It's a great book to read, but at the same time, also the other two are as equally effective.
Well, you've given me 3 books to put onto my Audible list to listen to. I appreciate that. Well, Tom, you have been an amazing guest today. I appreciate your time, and I'm sure our audience appreciates all the good information and tidbits you've provided about your role as a learning leader today. As our thank you, I would like to plant 5 trees in your name. We plant trees as our charity here at Training Pros, and so we want to do 5 trees in your name as a thank you. So thank you for joining us.
I appreciate it so much. Thanks for this opportunity. It's wonderful to hear that about the trees. It's a great way to help. Thank you again for taking the time. It's a pleasure to be with you today. All the best. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Learning Leader Spotlight. We hope you'll tune in again next week to hear from another learning leader from another industry.
Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. You'll find links in the show notes to any resources mentioned on today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.